What's on, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Ross, I like games, and today we are continuing our look at all the best cards from the second Keyforge expansion, Age of Ascension, by having a little bit of a look at the top 10 cards from this. Once again, I put a poll up on the Facebook group. Once again, huge thank you to everyone that took the time to vote. And for the top 7, I'm in lockstep. I think the community as a whole did a good job with the top 7. I don't necessarily agree with the lower 3, so let's get cracking. Couple honourable mentions before we get rolling here proper. Nightforge gives you an amber bonus, and if you haven't forged a key this turn, you may forge a key at +4 current cost. It's not the best way to forge extra keys. Might Makes Right can really surprise with the keys. We've got Key Charge, which is a great card because, of course, you can forge at the beginning of your turn and in the middle of your turn. The fact that you can't forge 2 keys in one turn, well, it's the fact that it's a straight +4. It's not the best key cheating card by quite a way, but it still deserves a mention. Scowly Caper is one of my favourite designed cards in the entire set, but I don't think it's quite good enough to be on the top 10. You put it on your opponent's battle line under their control, and they can use it as if it belonged to any of their houses, but at the end of the turn it destroys one of its neighbours. And the great thing is it's got skirmish, so your opponent can use an action card to try and destroy it, but they cannot destroy it through making it fight. They can't just throw it at other creatures. It's so much fun. And I want to give a shout out to Dusk Chronicles. Gives you an amber bonus, and if your opponent's got more amber than you, you draw a card. If you've got more amber than them, you archive a card. Please do try and avoid dropping it when you have the same amount of amber as your opponent, because in that situation, you get neither of the bonuses. Sorry about that. It's a fun card, but I don't think it's quite good enough to make the list. So in at number 10, we've got Life for a Life. Gives you an amber bonus, and when you play it, you sacrifice one of your creatures to deal 6 damage to a creature. And this is situational, which is why it comes in at number 10 rather than higher, but there is a lot of good that you can do here. So we're going to talk about Brenda the Fanatic a bit later on, and you're going to see that this wants to be destroyed. Oh look, Life for a Life is good. Dust Imp is a card. It did make its way into Age of Ascension. When it's destroyed, you gain 2 amber. So get a Dust Imp down, destroy it with this. But then, of course, your opponent might have something like a Dusk Witch. What Alex on our stream in Birmingham called Burn the Witch cards, because they're often witches. And the thing is, they're so good you cannot leave them on the field. Dusk Witch, your creatures enter play ready. But it's got elusive, which means you've got to attack it with 2 creatures in order to destroy it. That's annoying. Life for a Life here just gets rid of it. There will be times you don't want to sacrifice one of your own creatures, and that's a little bit sad. But the fact that it gives you a really nice out against a 6-power creature or lower, the fact that it gives you an amber bonus, and the fact that there are a bunch of creatures that you will want to get off your side of the field means that this is a really good card and deserving of a space at number 10. In at number 9, Perplexing Sophistry. One of the more awkwardly named cards in the set. Gives you an amber bonus, and if you have more amber than your opponent, they discard a random card from their hand, and you draw a card. Again, we can't put it too high on the list because it's a bit too situational. It's not always going to be everything you dreamed of and a little bit more. But you've got hand disruption, you've got draw power, and you've got an amber bonus. Yes, there will be turns you don't get all the bonuses, but one of the things I like to think of, the worst case scenario here is it gives you an amber bonus. Something like Life for a Life, you can't get the amber bonus without sacrificing one of your own creatures, unless you don't have any creatures. Here, even if it doesn't do anything else, you're still getting the amber bonus. But amber bonus plus draw a card plus hand disruption is good by me. And in at number 8, we've got Heist Knight. It's an alpha card, so it must be the first thing you do when you're doing stuff part of the turn. You forge a key, and then it's Heist Knight. But when you play it, you steal an amber for each friendly thief creature. And the vast majority of Shadow's creatures are thieves. We're going to see a bunch of them in the rest of this video. They're all thieves. Scowly Cable we've already looked at. It's a thief. You see where I'm going with this, ladies and gentlemen. So, it's kind of awkward. You've got to have the creatures out before you play the card. They've got to be out from a previous turn. It can be played around. Your opponent can just destroy your creatures, and then this does nothing. It's why it doesn't end up higher on the list. If it didn't have alpha, it would be broken, because you'd be able to play 3 or 4 creatures and then gain 3 or 4 amber, and it would be dumb. It's got to be an alpha card. And I'll tell you what, it's a pretty gosh darn good one, but it can be played around. In at number 7, Guard Disguise. This is where we start being in lockstep with the people who voted on the Facebook poll. It's an artifact and it has an action. Sacrifice Guard Disguise. If your opponent has 3 amber or fewer, steal 3 amber. Basically steal them all. If they've got 3 amber or less, you grab 3 amber or fewer. Language is important. You get to steal them all. It's not always going to work, but then again, it's an artifact, so you can save it. And as long as your opponent doesn't play something like remote access, whereby they can steal it or use it, and then they sacrifice it and steal up to 3 of your amber, you can just basically sit there and wait and steal 3 amber at one point when it's convenient. I like. In at number 6, Shard of Greed. When I first put the poll up, this took an early lead and dropped down to number 6, and I think this is exactly where it should be. It is an artifact, and it's got an action, so you can use it every Shadow's turn. You gain an amber for each friendly shard. Here's the thing. If you've only got this down, you gain an amber, which is fine, but there's a million different action cards out there that just gain you an amber. If you've got 2 shards out, it gains you 2 amber. And if you're lucky enough to be playing a 3 shard deck, and you are lucky enough to get all 3 of your shards out, then it becomes phenomenal and probably should be at number 1. It is probably the number 1 card in Shadows. If you've got a 3 shard deck and you've got all 3 shards out, that, ladies and gentlemen, is a long way from guaranteed. It can be an over-the-top phenomenal card, but it can also just be an extra amber once per turn. And that's fine, that's good, but it's not top 5 good. Speaking of which, in at number 5, we've got Swindle. Swindle is one of these cards which people don't always seem to be able to agree on, so I think the bottom end of top 5 seems fair. It is the only alpha and omega card we've had so far. You get the chance to forge a key, it goes to your doing stuff part of the turn, and it must be both the first and last thing that you do. But you steal 3 amber. And that's it. You're only drawing maximum 1 card because you're only getting 1 card out of your hand to replace. And you can't have that ridiculous stealing 8 amber turn. And you can't have that ridiculous gaining 8 amber turn. But there are an awful lot of turns in Keyforge where you've got 2 goals. Get myself closer to forging a key, preferably putting myself on check, telling my opponent I will be forging next turn, while also stopping my opponent, or at least getting them further away from forging a key. And Swindle does it nicely. It's not the kind of card that's going to give you turns like where you play Full Moon, play a bunch of creatures and drop a key charge. You aren't having that kind of turn with Swindle. You're putting a ceiling on your turn. But unless your opponent's got 9 or more amber, this is probably going to be pretty good most of the time. In at number 4, we've got Murkens. Murkens is probably my other favourite designed card in Shadows. It's a great card. What you do when you play, it's a 2-power creature. Choose a random card in your opponent's archive or the top card of your opponent's deck. Play it as if it was yours. It's so much fun. If it's a creature, you play it as if it's your creature. If it's an action, you play it as if it's your action. You get to do an extra thing, but you get to do an extra thing that isn't usually in your deck. You might not have remote access, but maybe this gives you remote access when your opponent is saving their Nepenthe Seed and you don't have any other way to get rid of it. Maybe you've got 7 amber and then you hit a key charge and you just get to forge a key mid-turn. There's a million different weird things you can do with this. Now, it can also be completely useless. You could hit something like a Khalifi Dragon, but where you don't have enough amber to actually play it. Or a key charge where you don't actually have enough amber to be able to forge a key. It's not perfect, but it's kind of fun. I was watching the other top 4 game at the Birmingham stream. I wasn't actually streaming the top 4 game. I was watching the other top 4 game. And one of the players had absolutely nothing left. And they said, right, it's all down to this. What can I hit off Murkens? But his opponent had no cards in deck. And the rule in Keyforge is you do not shuffle your discard pile to become your deck when you run out of cards. You shuffle it when you go to draw a card. He played Murkens. There were 0 cards in deck. And that was the end of the game. It's not always a great card, but I think more often than not it gives you a rather nice advantage. In at number 3, we've got Sucker Punch. I've commentated quite a lot of Keyforge games since Age of Ascension came out, and I have seen Sucker Punch come in a lot. Gives you an amber bonus, which is nice, and it is an alpha card, so it must be the first thing you do during your doing stuff part of the turn. And when you play it, you deal 2 damage to an enemy creature. So if your opponent's got something like a Dusk Witch that you desperately need to get rid of, this can help. But if you destroy a creature doing this, you get to archive it, which means on your next Shadow's turn, you can grab it, play it for the amber bonus, and deal 2 damage. I've seen people chain this turn after turn after turn. You get the 2 cheeky damage, which can be huge against certain creatures. I mean, what if your opponent plays an Ember Imp? Ember Imp says you can only play 2 cards during your turn. This will just take it out, while giving you an Ember bonus, and then archiving it. Yes, it's an alpha card. Yes, I've seen decks with 3 or 4 copies in where they just never get to use them all because they're all alpha cards. Seriously, having too many alpha cards in a deck can be kind of annoying. But amber bonus plus cheeky damage and potentially reusing it, I love it, ladies and gentlemen. Although it is kind of annoying when you archive it, when you've got an archiving deck and you're trying to archive Logos cards, and then you pick up your archive and you've got 1 random Shadows card. That's annoying. The archiving is not optional. In at number 2, we've got Brenda the Fanatic, and I seriously considered putting this at number 1. It's a 3-power creature with skirmish, so you can fight without taking any damage in return. When you play it, your opponent gains an amber, but when it's destroyed, you steal free amber. The best use for this generally is playing it when your opponent's quite far away from forging a key, but then when they've got 8, 7 or 6 amber, you destroy Brenda Fanatic, and then you get to put them off check. I mean, something like Life for a Life is great with this. You've got Brenda Fanatic down, you play Life for a Life, you steal free amber, you get the amber bonus, and you deal 6 damage to one of your opponent's creatures. This is a great one to leave on the field, because maybe your opponent can play something like a Nature's Call to make you pick it up, but they can't destroy it or you steal the free amber. So most of the time you can play this down fairly early, wait for when you really need to steal free amber, and you're off. Bearing in mind we said how good Swindle is for stealing free amber, and that's an Alpha and Omega card. This one you just leave on the field, and your opponent's choice a lot of the time is, oh, can I maybe destroy it when it's not going to stop me forging a key and it only steals 1 or 2 amber? When you're forcing your opponent into that kind of a decision, I'm happy. But in at number 1, we've got Ronnie Wristlocks. And here's the thing about poor old Ronnie. It's not quite as flashy as a lot of the cards on this list. 2-power creature, you'll notice it is a thief, you'll also notice Brenda's a thief. You steal an amber when you play it, but if your opponent's got 7 or more, you steal 2. Now, the ideal situation here, your opponent's got 7 amber, you play this, steal 2, yay, now they're not forging. It's not as flashy as Brenda, where you steal 3. And it's not as flashy as Swindle, where you steal 3. And it's not as flashy as Shard of Greed, where you can gain free amber, etc. But what Ronnie has, and the reason why Ronnie gets in at number 1, it is consistent. I keep sitting here talking through these cards and going, but under this circumstance it's not so good. The only way Ronnie doesn't give you good value is if your opponent has no amber. And if your opponent has no amber, who even cares? This is good. This is really good. It's not the flashiest number one, and for that I can only apologise. It's not like Exhume we looked at in Dis, where we looked at it and went, oh my god, that's an amazing card. And it's not like Martian Generosity, which was also number one by a mile for Mars. Shadows doesn't have that amazing number one card like we saw for Dis and Mars. But it's a really good, reliable card nonetheless. Essentially, Shadows has really good cards, but they're all a bit further grouped together. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. Those are the top 10 cards from Shadows in Age of Ascension. Remember, we're only looking at new Age of Ascension cards, not cards that were brought over from Call of the Archons. But I would very much like to know what your favourites are. So please do let me know in the comment section. Go nuts! But please do remember to be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, and follow me on Twitter at the Wossy, where we talk about games like Keyforge and a whole bunch of others. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching Wossy Plays.